hope it's recording. Okay. Hi everyone, welcome to the first Newman talk on the Instagram. Because of COVID and distance learning, we're also doing our topic nights and our regular club meetings virtually. Um, so that means you still do talks, activities, and all things like that. Um, But just because we have a certain time, we know that people can't make it. So we thought it'd be a cool idea to record the talk and to post it onto here. Um, just so you can see like God's grace and the way that God works in us. That night, you can still be a part of that. And yeah, to introduce myself, I am Chelsea Tenlock and I am a third year bioengineering major at UOP. I'm happy to be here. I love Newman, and let's get into it. So, the topic for this night was being still. And of course, the talk is going to reflect that. So, let's talk about being still. So, to start things off, let's talk about what is being still. So, being still is allowing yourself to take in the present moment and not doing anything. It's very much just cherishing that literal second that you are in right now. No moving, no rustling and bustling. Just like I'm doing it right now. I'm being still. It is that. It's so simple and so easy to grasp. At least I hope it is. Um, so why would we have a whole entire Newman meeting dedicated to just being still? Obviously, it would be so easy to grasp and so easy to understand. But um, as college students, we don't think that that's the definition of being still. We think that being still is being unproductive or being lazy. As college students, we're very much on the go all the time, trying to get from point A to point B, trying to plan out our lives through the majors we choose, trying to get to our career that we're someday going to get. Um, we never leave time for just being still, for just resting, because there's always something that we need to do. And if we are still, we're not taking that time to accomplish that thing. And it's just wasting our time. It's making us look like we're unproductive or being lazy, but no. Very much the term that goes, you need to take one step back to take two steps forward. Being still is so essential in our journeys and essential for our mental health and just helps us so much in the long run. And so let's talk about why it's important to be spilled, still in a spiritual aspect. Um, when you're being still, or when you're not being still, it's very hard to know God. Just like a relationship here on earth with your friends and your family, uh, when you're still with them, you get to hang out, talk, converse. You say something, they say something. You say how you feel, they say how they feel. But with God, we tend to work things differently. We talk to God while we're moving. Like me, I often pray like in my car when I'm driving somewhere. Um, but it's just me talking to him like, hey God, like, can I get this favor from you? Hey God, there's this thing happening in my life, can you change it? Just constantly telling God, but while I'm still moving, my mind is, I like, my body is present but my mind isn't. I am just projecting onto him how I feel and projecting my emotions onto him. And when I do that, I don't let him work in my life. I don't get to see what he's doing in my life. I don't get to hear what he wants to say to me. So it's very hard to know God when you're not being still or taking the moment to be present in that moment. And also, when you're being still, you realize your own littleness. Um, Very much when we are constantly trying to get from point A to point B. We are trying to make our own plan for our lives. We are trying to plan out every single step, and we get caught up in that. We get caught up in our own world, and we forget that we are God's children and we're in His world. And when you're caught up in your own world, you become your world. Everything is very much all yourself. And you are just this big person who needs to do everything and is so capable of like planning your life and getting to where you need to go that you forget that God is there to help you. Um, when you find your own purpose, you forget that God already has one for you. And when you forget how little you are compared to God, think you can do everything, but that is so impossible. We always need God's help in completing our purpose and accomplishing things. So it's important to be still so that we can know Him, know what He wants for us, know what His plan is for us, and so that we can remember that that is the case, that that is what we need to do, is to follow His plan and what He has in store for us. So let's dive in a little deeper. I just threw this kind of phrase at you. God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. So, especially us as students, as Catholics, at least for me, um, we tend to want to be the perfect Catholics, the perfect servants of God. We set this unrealistic expectation on ourselves because, who are we to tell the perfect God that we are imperfect? And this is what leads to us trying to find our purpose on our own, to do our thing on our own. Because, at least for me, I tend to say, like, to God, I don't want to be a burden on you. So let me do it on all my own. I don't want, like, God has so many other things to do. Like, He has no business wanting to help me. Like, I'm not perfect, so why would He even do that? But when you go back to the statement, God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. It's saying that God finds you perfect even in your imperfections. He calls you because you are you. And we accept the call just because we want to serve Him. We don't strive, at least we shouldn't strive to be the perfect Catholics, because that doesn't exist. But simply by going on this journey of believing in Him and loving Him and doing His works here on earth, we're already qualified by all means, more qualified than we can ever think. So it says in Romans 8:28, and we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. We try so hard on finding our own purpose that we forget that it's supposed to be His that we follow. It goes back to remembering our own littleness and remembering that we're God's children and are simply just trying to do what He wants from us. So by being still, we remember that we're qualified to do whatever it is we need to do. By being still, we hear and feel and see His purpose for us because we know we're qualified for it by all means. The next point, faith goes both ways. Um, Even though we can say, like, yeah, God, like, I totally believe that you're going to pick things up after me. I totally believe that you love me and that you care about me, and that wherever I feel like I fall short, your grace is going to pick it up. But we also have to believe those words. Um, like I said, we always try to find our own thing and to find our purpose and not be a burden on God. But we have to believe that God is on our team and that God is going to help us. I struggle with this a lot. Um, I love taking control of my life and I love to, make sure everything is planned detail by detail and, not having to ask for help because, that's just who I am. I am. And there's a lot of pride that goes into that. But also, there's a lot of forgetting that I have to trust in Him. Because when I'm projecting my emotions onto Him and I'm moving and rustling and bustling and not being still, a huge part of me also doesn't trust that He's going to help me. And, you know, like I said, you're not a burden on God and that He is on your team no matter what, but you have to allow Him to do that for you. You can listen to what He has to say and you can see His purpose in your life and everything like that, but you have to trust and have faith that He will help you and He will love you and He will show you mercy and that His grace always comes through. So in Exodus 14:14 it says, "The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent. The Lord will fight for you while you keep still. The Lord will fight for you even when you're doing nothing but lifting it up to Him." There's so much power in this one Bible verse because of the context. In this part of Exodus, Moses and the people are on the way to the promised land, and the Red Sea is in their way. And if Moses was a college student right now, he would try to find the solution so fast. He would say, like, all right, let's get some boats going. Let's teach everyone how to swim. Let's, I don't know, ride a fish across. I don't know. Just trying so hard to find a solution on your own that without thinking that God's going to help. But good thing Moses isn't one of us. Moses isn't a college student in 2020. Um, in this moment, Moses is presented a problem, trying to get all these people across the Red Sea. And instead of finding a solution, he lifts it up to God. He asks Him for help. And he just lifts up everything he's feeling, all this pressure, all these anxieties of trying to help these people. And he lifts it up to God. And we all know how the story goes. Moses is still, and then he parts the Red Sea. I mean, of course, none of us are going to part the Red Sea anytime soon, you know. But that act of being still in that moment and trusting that the Lord is going to help him and believing that he's qualified to help allows him to fix the problem. When he's in that moment and being still, he's not being unproductive or being lazy. He took a step back to take two steps forward. And, when I first read this Bible passage, I was thinking in my head, like, what would I have done if I was in Moses' place? I'd be terrified. I would feel inadequate. I would feel crazy. Like, what is going on? All the imperfections in 1 second. But knowing that God is going to help me shows that those imperfections didn't matter at all. Because Moses must have felt the same way. And to see God let him part the Red Sea shows that he doesn't care about those imperfections that you may feel, those anxieties, those feelings of being inadequate. Because God will still intercede if you trust in Him. So, if all of these points aren't wrapping up in your brain, let's talk about an analogy. So, in this book, Searching for and Maintaining Peace, um, the author, the priest, says, talks about water and an ocean. So, the ocean can do one of two things. First, it can, be calm, rest, be still. And it could do another thing. And trust me, I learned this in physics. Um, Newton's first law, when thing something remains in rest unless another force moves it. So, similarly, in Newton's first law, the ocean can remain at rest until something pushes it, whether that be a boat trying to go to sea or a person trying to swim. Um, ripples and ripples of effects happen, waves happen. And even though these are small, let's talk about bigger ones. What about storms? Huge, gigantic storms, ugly storms, you know, um, thunder, lightning, and everything, and the ocean becomes chaotic. It is constantly tossing and turning their rough waters. Very scary with three R's and three Y's. It looks like this. As a person, I wouldn't want to swim in that ocean. I wouldn't want to be a boat going onto that ocean because you have no idea what's going to happen. Am I going to get knocked off of sea? Am I going to drown? You don't know. Nothing is clear to you. But like I said, if we go to the first thing I said water could do, it could be calm. It could be at rest. It could be peaceful and not scary at all. It can look like that. Beautiful, beautiful, nice skies, nice reflection. And when we take this analogy, when you take this analogy and we see that we are the oceans and God is the sun, it's very hard to reflect God in this picture, in this rough water. It's very hard to see God in the tossing and turning of waves. It's very hard to see God when you're moving so much because of worldly things, because of a storm. But in this picture, you can see the sun. You can see all of its beautiful aspects, all of the things that make it amazing. And when you are being still and able to reflect and able to know God, people can easily see it in your actions. In the things you do after you're being still, God can be reflected through you when you're being still. But He can't be reflected when you're constantly moving and tossing and turning into the scary, scary ocean. So, I've been talking a lot about the importance of being still and what is being still. I'm not going to leave you hanging without anything to do. So, how can you be still? Prayer. Um, Prayer is something so vital in our faith and something that we need to do. Um, and something we should be, well, hopefully you're familiar with. You don't have to be, but you can find out how to. So, let's talk about the different types of prayer. The first is vocal. So examples like the Rosary, the Chaplet of the Divine Mercy, Nicene Creed, and even spontaneous prayer, where you're kind of just sitting down, being still, and you think, oh, I kind of want to pray right now. Um, those are all vocal prayer, where you say aloud what you're praying. Um, very, you just, yeah, you just say what your prayer is, very vocal. The second is meditative prayer. So instead of saying out loud what your prayer is, you are still being still and use some form of a guide. So through music or like a guided meditation or anything you can listen to or see that helps you in being still. Um, Meditative is, I use meditate a lot for music and listening to worship music and listening to God through the lyrics I hear in the song. And the last type of prayer is contemplative, where you're still, you're not saying anything, and there's complete silence. You're kind of being still and allowing things to just be. And with all these three types of prayers, it's so essential that you have all three. Even if you're more familiar with one or you're kind of scared of another one, you need all three of them in your life to spiritually be still and to listen to God. And even though you might be thinking like, "Oh, what the heck is that prayer? I've never done that in my life." That is actually false. If you've ever been to mass, you go through all three types in Mass. So with the vocal prayer, you do the Nicene Creed, we do the Our Father, we say a lot of prayers actually in Mass. I hope you've noticed that. Meditative, in preparation for the gifts, we're always listening to a choir. During communion, we listen to the words of the choir sing as we reflect and we are still and we pray. And contemplative, this one might not be as obvious, but after communion, the priest always stays in silence. So if you ever thought, like, hey, what's going on? Let's pick it up. Why are we just sitting here? There's actually a reason, and that is contemplative prayer. It's stillness and silence. And even though it's not as long as the other ones during Mass, it's still as important. And it's still important that we go through it. So the next time you go to Mass, recognize the different types of prayer you're going through: vocal, meditative, contemplative, and recognize the different ways you're being still. Just in this 1 hour, there's so much reflection that can be made. And in that moment, you're listening to God. You are listening to what He has to say. You're knowing God, and you're realizing your own littleness. With God in front of you and God in your presence, you remember that you're His child and you are doing what He wants you to do. So, in this actual meeting, um, we actually went through adoration, a virtual adoration. There are different links on YouTube for different adorations you can watch. Just Google virtual adoration, and I would have invited you then, but I still invite you now to try it out. Um, be still for a minute and slowly go longer if you can, from a minute to 5 minutes to 10 to even maybe 20. I don't know, whatever you feel optimal for you. As long as you're being still and you're listening to what God has to say and you're remembering your own littleness, it'll help you so much on your way. And while you're reflecting, we also had some discussion questions that we talked about during this meeting. So I'll leave them here. I don't know if you want to pause. I don't know if you can pause on Instagram, but screenshot it. You can also look at these discussion questions and reflect on these while you're kind of meditating and being still and hanging out with God. Um, and I really hope this talk helped you and it has, I don't know, sparked something in your faith journey or been something that you needed. And I hope you are being still and reflecting, and this is something you can hold in your heart for the rest of your life. And please come to our topic nights. We have a lot of fun topics like these on the rise for you. It's every first Friday at 5 p.m. And you'll also see me there. That'll be exciting. So you don't have to watch a recording of me. And feel free to watch this the first time, the second time, the third time, and rewatch it if you ever need a reminder to be still. So until then, goodbye everyone, and I'll see you on Instagram and at Newman. Bye bye.